mom. That's so important to most men. Mom has such an impact. But the first time I heard about this material, I never really thought about the impact she had on my manhood, on my masculinity. Yeah. And so this was really helpful for me.
Yeah, man, I was the same way, that I had never even thought about my relationship with my mom and what that meant for my masculine journey, or my relationships with my wife as an adult. I mean, I never connected any of those dots.
Yeah, it's just like with our dad. A lot of guys had a really positive experience with their dad, others guys not so positive. And with our moms, we need to really look at that relationship. And was it a healthy relationship, or is it something we need to address today?
Yeah, and there are some men that, their moms, maybe they were busy, or maybe they lost their moms early on, and the man wasn't really nurtured well by his mom, and that's affected his masculinity. But for the vast majority of us, it's just the opposite problem. And a lot of times stemming out of the father wound, as we talked about. But a man goes into adulthood overly bonded with his mom, mama's boy, and being over-mothered, and all the implications of that as he carries that into his 20s and into his own marriage, and now it's mama versus wife, and how do I handle all this? And so that's some real drama for all of us.
You got to be careful though. You can't touch mama too much. You know what I mean? Because if mama's not happy, nobody's happy.
Your mamas are still washing your clothes and cooking you there, right? But yeah, you're right.
This is going to help a lot of men, no doubt about it. This is going to be a helpful session, and I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, let's get to it.
When I married Tom, I loved the fact that he had a close relationship with his mom. In my way of thinking, a man who loves and honors his mom is a man who loves and honors his wife.
Mom is amazing. A phenomenal cook, keeps a clean house, and she always knows when I need a hug or a good kick in the rear. She is the best.
There's no job more important than raising a child. Tommy knows his mother is always there for him.
I thought once we got married, I'd be the most important woman in his life. Ha!
I think there's a lot Jenny could learn from my mom, but she always insists on doing things her way. Why reinvent the wheel?
Mom doesn't cook it like this. Mom folds my clothes like this. Mom thinks you're being a little harsh with the kids.
I think Mom could be like Mr. Miyagi, and Jenny could be like the Karate Kid. Wax on, wax off.
I know what makes Tommy happy. If Jenny would just let me teach her, I'm sure she could be just like me.
For Valentine's Day, I gave Jenny this beautiful bouquet of roses, and she was thrilled. Until she found out I gave a matching bouquet to Mom.
Such a sweet boy.
For our 10th anniversary, he tells me we're taking an Alaskan cruise. I was ecstatic. Until I found out that his parents were booked in the adjoining cabin. How romantic.
Surprise!
I want him to have a close relationship with his mom. But he's 41. It's time to cut the cord. Or at least stretch that sucker out a bit.
And I am willing to try. I'm sincere about that. Is that acceptable?
I suppose it's a start.
I'm sorry, I was asking Mom.
It's all right, dear. Well, let's get some lunch. My boy needs his energy. Do you want to join us, dear?
Welcome, gentlemen. In this session, we're going to explore the influence of a mom on her son. How sometimes, unknowingly, that influence, even with the best of intentions, can end up as a wound in a man's life. But let's get one thing clear up front. I'm not here to pick on your mom. I know those can be fighting words, but nonetheless, the mother-son relationship is an important part of who you are. Maybe you're like me. My mom had an amazing impact on my life. Helped to shape me in many ways. She sacrificed for me on numerous occasions because she wanted me to be successful in life. I cannot think of a time in my life when my mom was not there for me. Growing up as a kid, college, in my adult life, she has constantly been a source of encouragement for me as a man. Many of you have had incredible moms. Your mom may have done a fantastic job supporting your journey to manhood. She may have prepared you for independence as an adult and modeled for you godly womanhood. Thank God for moms. Whatever your relationship with your mom has been, it has helped shape you as a man. And today, we're going to explore how your mom has potentially affected you in different ways. The book, The Mom Factor, written by Henry Cloud and John Townsend, says it this way. The way your mom has handled your needs as a child has shaped your worldview, your relationships, your marriage, your career, your self-image, your life. What we learned in our relationship with our mother deeply affects every area of our adult life. Guys, moms are significant people in our lives. They are strategically positioned by God to help shape and mold a son. And we are meant to have a special relationship with our mom. But you need to know that a healthy relationship with mom requires two significant breaks. The first break is the physical. We all know about this one. At birth, a newborn who has been a part of his mother's body for 9 months is now separated. It requires a literal cutting of the umbilical cord. Suddenly, a transformation takes place. The baby goes from being one with mom to being separated from mom. For guys, that's not really a big deal. But for moms, cutting that cord is deeply significant. For some women, it can even be a difficult emotional transition. We have a term to describe this situation: postpartum depression. Postpartum depression literally means after-birth blues. There's also a second separation that a lot of moms have just as much difficulty making. It's a separation that occurs when a son seeks to go from being a mama's boy to being a man in his own right. When that time comes, another break is desperately needed. This break is emotional. Just as you had a physical cut from mom at birth, you also must have an emotional cut from mom as you enter manhood. There should be a moment in a son's life where his relationship with mom is renegotiated and he becomes an adult, a man. Unfortunately, since our society doesn't promote a clear path to authentic manhood, it also doesn't provide a clear pathway for an emotional break from mom. And that's left many men deeply entrenched or overly connected to mom. They have too much mom in their life. They can't make a decision without her. They've got to talk to her on the phone all the time. They let her interfere with their marriage or family. They can't tell her no. When something difficult comes up in life, they run home to mama to let her either comfort them, write the check, or whatever. Often, it's difficult for these men to fully identify and enter into the fraternity of manhood. They can't join us in the noble fight for manhood because there hasn't been a clean emotional break from mom. According to Meg Meeker, author of the book Boys Should Be Boys, sons in this type of relationship with mom can feel like their masculinity is fragile and up for grabs, since they were unable to stand up for themselves and since mom always had to be their stand-in. She was always holding the life net in case they fell. So, a healthy relationship between a son and a mom should proceed through two separations. First, there must be a physical separation from mom at birth to end the oneness that began at conception. Second, there must be an emotional separation from mom when a boy transitions to manhood so that he can ultimately have a healthy oneness with his wife. Guys, you need to know that the Bible speaks of this issue directly. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, it reads, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." You see, God's plan is for you to have a healthy separation from mom. But obviously, Many men today don't make those healthy breaks. They have a mother wound. Here is the definition of a mother wound and the effect it can have on men. It's an unhealthy emotional relationship with mom that causes a son to either be threatened by the influence of women later on in his life, or to over-identify and become submissive to the influence of women. Men with a mother wound will often drift to one of two extremes in how they relate to women. They often become either dominant males or soft males. If they are dominant males, then they are too controlling towards women. They probably had an overly involved mom in the home and felt suffocated by her over control. Problem is, that's how they learned to relate to women. Now they see all women as a possible threat to their independence. They fear intimacy. They fear getting too close to a woman will result in giving up control. So a barrier remains up, and often they marry a woman whom they can completely rule over. And anytime that woman expresses her rights or needs, he freaks out and becomes more controlling and dominates. He has no category to allow her to simply express her rights, needs, and equality. He's always on the defensive. On the other hand, we have the soft male. These guys become passive and submissive toward women. They lean way too much on their wives, expecting her to provide the way mom did. When looking for a wife, these guys are basically just pulling out a giant umbilical cord and looking to plug it in somewhere. He's looking for a mother wife to care, lead, and provide for him. He marries a stronger woman. In the day-to-day, when issues arise and decisions need to be made, he waits for her to initiate. He shuns risk-taking. He has a hard time making decisions. Deep down, he wants her to make the decision. He wants her to be the warrior. He wants her to take the risk. His natural disposition is to be passive and submissive. First, his wife thinks she is marrying a sensitive man. But after time, however, she finds out he's just being passive, and it drives her crazy. Guys, in relating to women, we are called to neither be dominant nor dependent. We are called to love our wives like Christ loves the church. We are called to be servant leaders. We are called to initiate for the benefit of others. There are a few common characteristics of the mother womb which you should be aware of as you process your mom relationship. First, this womb is typically not one of abuse, neglect, or absenteeism. Usually, the mother wound is not a wound of inattention, but a wound of over-attention. It's an over-concern or over-involvement. Often, it's difficult to identify because it's disguised as love and care. It looks so nurturing. A mom says, "Son, I love you, and I'm trying to help. I know you're 27, but don't forget to pay your phone bill. Can I do your laundry? Do you need a little spending money this month?" When a mom is asking her grown son those type questions, she's either enabling extended adolescence or she's still trying to control him. Either way, it's time to let go. Also, this womb often begins with an absent or distant father. Unfortunately, the norm today for some dads is to just make the money, if he even sticks around. And it's left to mom to carry the load emotionally. In the last 50 years or so, our modern society has given more and more over to mom. In fact, sociologist Marion Levy says it this way, that modern men are overwhelmingly likely to have been reared under the direct domination and supervision of females from birth to maturity. Consequently, with mom and other women becoming the primary caretakers, many boys are left to figure out masculinity without the guidance of other men. And they can become conditioned to always deferring to the woman in their life. Today, we also have a new phenomenon arising. More and more adult sons are coming back home to live with mom and dad. We've even created a term for them, Boomerang kids. You send them out, but they come right back to you. However, the Bible makes it clear that a son should launch out like an arrow, equipped to face the world, not like a boomerang. Now, of course, young adults can make mistakes or struggle and experience a temporary season of needed support. And family members are meant to help one another. But parental help for an adult child should never become an obstacle that prevents a man from assuming responsibility for himself. Well, guys, what causes the mother wound? Part of the cause can sometimes be linked to a mom's situation, her personality, and even her struggles. Let's examine 4 types of moms who could contribute to a mother wound. You may recognize some of these descriptions. The first type of mom is the unintentional mom. This mom doesn't understand the power she has over her son's life and how she can potentially warp his masculinity. She is not being intentional in the way she is raising him. She has no vision for him. And by default, she doesn't look to release her son into the fraternity of manhood, but looks and continues guiding and controlling his life. She still talks to her son like a boy. She stays oblivious to his need to connect with other men and make a healthy break from her. Another common type of mom is the hurting mom. A woman, for one reason or another, has lost emotional connection with her husband. And so she makes up for this by over-connecting with her son. She is lonely. And she is trying to get her needs met that should have been met by her husband. So she holds on too tightly. Sometimes she can even get over-involved in her son's marriage. Guys, this will always create conflict. Even if your mom is hurting, you can never allow her to come between you and your wife. It will always sabotage your marriage. Thirdly, we have the unwilling to release mom. Oftentimes, these moms have dominant personalities, and they simply love to be in control. They enjoy injecting their opinion into every situation, and they presume their son will comply with all of their requests. She'll ask questions like, "You are coming to our house for Christmas, aren't you? You'll be coming over for lunch on Sunday, right?" She can be overbearing to the point that the son can feel almost powerless to say no. For you married guys, you can feel that your mom often wants one thing and your wife wants another. You feel yourself in between a rock and a hard place. If you let this happen, you'll find yourself in manhood hell. Guys, you got to put up healthy boundaries with mom if you want your marriage to be all it can be. Then there's the fill in the gap mom. Now we applaud the heroic efforts of single moms, women who raised their kids despite the fact that dad wasn't around. However, with dad absent, she probably had to fill in too many of the gaps. Sometimes this can lead to an overconnection and dependence if the son doesn't have some strong male mentors in his life to help guide him. In our next session, we're going to address the question of how we can deal with the mother wound. We want to close today's session by giving you a brief preview of how to address this issue. Let's turn to look at our model of authentic manhood, Jesus. Can we learn anything from the way Jesus interacted with his mom? Did you know that Jesus had some conflict with his mom? These details are often overlooked, but we can catch glimpses of them in the Gospel of Mark. Listen to this story from Mark chapter 3 as Jesus is about to preach to a crowd. Then Jesus entered a house, and again the crowd gathered, so that he and his disciples were not even able to eat. When his family heard about this, they went to take charge of him, for they said, "He is out of his mind." Then Jesus' mother and brothers arrived. Standing outside, they sent someone in to call him. A crowd was sitting around him. They told him, "Your mother and brothers are outside looking for you." "Who are my mother and my brothers?" he asked. Then he looked at those seated in a circle around him and said, Here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does God's will is my brother and sister and mother. Now, of course, we don't have a complete picture of Jesus' family dynamics. But did you see how Jesus' family, including his mother, were trying to control him? Yet Jesus had his vision fixed on what God thinks, not on what mom thinks. He had a higher allegiance than his mother's approval. That was God's will for his life. So he didn't necessarily do whatever his mom wanted whenever she wanted it. He had healthy boundaries. Let me show you another scene from Jesus' life. This scene comes from John chapter 19, when Jesus is on the cross. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved, now that's John the apostle standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Dear woman, here is your son." And to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, this disciple took her into his home. In this scene, we see Jesus providing for his mom. He's making sure that she would be cared for after he was gone. You see, Jesus not only had healthy boundaries with his mom, but he also continued to follow the fifth commandment, which says, honor your father and your mother. He understood her significance in his life, and his actions respected her role as mom. Jesus offers us a perfect example of how to interact with our moms. Healthy boundaries, genuine love, and proper respect. Like we said at the beginning of this session, God has given moms a unique role in our lives. They have an incredible opportunity to launch us into manhood. And although we are called to make a healthy emotional break with them, we are also called to honor the position God has given them. Well, guys, this session introduced you to the mother womb. Many of us have unfinished business with mom that still needs to be taken care of. In the next session, we're going to deal with the wombs head on. We're going to offer you practical guidance on how to deal with wombs from mom and from dad, how to heal from it, and how to break free from it.
Hi, if I bother you for a second?
Sure.
Come in. You got a minute? Yeah. Sir, can I bother you for just a minute? Okay.
I'm a grade A, first class mom boy. I can admit that.
My mother? Well, it's complicated.
She ruled every aspect of my life. I always wanted to know who I was with, where we were going, what time we were going to be home.
My dad died when I was in 7th grade. I had to act as the father figure, so I had to act like it didn't affect me very much. My mom needed me to step up. She depended on me.
She was an amazing woman. Simply amazing. Raised 3 kids by herself. 3 kids by herself.
If my friends came over, she was always the one that was hanging out with us, and she would, have pizza and drinks ready in the kitchen for us.
I never looked back, and I don't want to hear another word from that woman as long as I live.
There's an uncomfortable tension between my wife, Nicole, and my mom. To come to think of it, she must have been kind of lonely and tired, too.
It's troubling getting out of bed sometimes for her. We needed some father figure, My brothers and sisters needed someone.
Nicole appreciates it, but she's also wants me to step up more. But how do you do that to your mother?
I couldn't ask for a better mother. A guy couldn't ask for a better mother.
I could never repay her for what she did for me. Thanks for the moment.
Wow, guys, just listening to that reminded me that I was kind of a prime candidate to fall into an unhealthy relationship with my mom. I mean, there's a big old void left by my dad who wasn't there. And so I could have easily just stepped into an overly bonded relationship with my mom.
I can see that, but I can also, even having my dad around, it is just so easy for us as men to allow in that receiving end of that relationship well into adulthood when, boy, there should be some boundaries. That's the word you use that I really like, established, to really make a clean break with mom.
You're trying to find that balance. You want to honor her because she is mother, but at the same time, you're also trying to become independent. And so there's a battle that's going on there.
Yeah.
But it really challenges a man to really begin to reject passivity, because it's easy to cling to her, but at the same time accept responsibility that I am becoming independent, that I am becoming the leader that God has designed me to be.
A guy needs to start doing that, when in his single adult years, because you don't just kind of let mom take care of you, and then when you get married, flip a switch at the wedding. I've officiated some weddings, and I'll integrate that into the ceremony, and I'll look at the groom, and I'll say to him as a son, I'll say, your primary role is about to shift. Right. You're no longer a son to your mom. I mean, you are, but it's shifting now. Your primary role is husband to your wife. And then I'll look at the mom and I'll say, I know you love your son. Yeah. But his primary role is not son to you now. It's husband to wife. And I said, and you need to release him to be that.
Mm-hmm. But JB, what do you do when you're trying to be released, but mom won't let go?
Yeah, I know, those mamas can be tough. That's exactly what we're talking about in this next session. It's a session on healing, and we're going to talk about the father wound and the mother wound, and really kind of cast a vision for guys to really follow through on those steps you just mentioned. What does it look like for me to set and establish clear boundaries with mom? What does it look like for me to step toward dad and with a heart of reconciliation, and how can all of that be redemptive? So we're going to talk about healing in this next session. That's exactly where we're headed.
It was such a holy moment.
To wrestle with that tension.
It was a lack of closeness.
We speak directly into how to deal with issues with dad, how to deal with issues from mom.
How do I find peace?
Nothing in the world is more freeing than to let go and forgive. You've got to choose to deal with this wound responsibly. We're going to challenge each of you to face those wounds head on.
The healing is not in their response. The healing is us taking responsibility.
That's exactly right.